Hi, everyone. Hi. Here we go. What is asexuality? Today, I'd like to start out by asking all of you, what are the first few words that come into your mind when you hear the word asexual? Now, hold that thought. If any of you guessed anything along the lines of moss, fungi, algae, or anything to do with budding, you're wrong. Asexuality is not the same as asexual reproduction. Asexuals are humans, not fungi or bacteria or amoebas. Asexuals do not reproduce by budding. And most importantly, asexuality is not the same as celibacy. Celibacy is a deliberate choice to abstain from sex, whereas asexuality is a sexual orientation. A survey conducted in 2004 placed the prevalence of asexuality at 1%, which granted doesn't sound like a lot of people until you consider that 1% of the US population alone accounts for over 3 million people, or roughly the population of Los Angeles. Here at Gunn High School, that's roughly 20 people. No, it's not relative to the rest of the population, but that's 20 people who face the struggle of discovering their identity and the issues surrounding it. The two most prominent asexuals seen in popular culture include Morrissey, depicted here, who's the lead singer of the Smiths, and Tim Gunn from the show Project Runway. Both have come out publicly, but aside from them, there aren't very many asexual figures in modern media. So why is asexual awareness important? Why do asexuals want to walk in pride parades when it seems like they have nothing to walk for? They could easily just stay at home. They aren't bothering anyone. They aren't doing anything to anybody. So why is visibility so important? We live in a sex-filled society. Advertisements use provocative sexual imagery. TV shows portray teenagers as being preoccupied with sex. But people write books and music and magazine articles about sex. Sex is everywhere. Because of this, a distressingly large majority of the asexual community report feeling like there was something wrong with them, or that they were broken before they discovered the existence of asexuality. There's so little mention of it that people have never even heard of asexuality. So for people who don't experience sexual attraction, growing up in a society where sex can be found everywhere can be very lonely. Now I'm going to tell you a little story. Over the summer recently, I came out to one of my friends, and his immediate reaction was to ask, "How can you be so sure if you've never had sex?" And so in response, I asked him if he was gay. "No," he said. To that I asked, "Then how can you be so sure if you've never had gay sex?" Thank you. So yeah, it's clearly a very hard concept for some people to get. Now, for those of you who have studied psychology, the DSM may sound familiar. The DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, lists HSDD, or Hypoactive Sexual Desire Disorder, as a mental affliction. A huge controversy within the asexual community is the existence of HSDD as a diagnosis, as it devalidates the asexuality as an orientation and is a very toxic and oppressive mindset to have. It parallels the movement to remove homosexuality from the DSM, which did happen successfully in 1973. On the topic of mental health, the prevalence of mental health issues associated with asexuality is proportional to the prevalence of mental health issues found in non-asexuals. That is to say, there is no link between asexuality and psychological disorders. Another very large issue concerns corrective rape, which is unfortunately very common within the queer community, but is especially prevalent for asexuals. The idea of corrective rape is that having sex with the right person will somehow change or cure your sexual orientation. For people who are not comfortable with their sexual orientation, corrective rape can be hard to identify, and this is true for asexuals as well. In mainstream media, asexuals are characterized as being abnormal, unhappy, socially awkward, and repressed. But more often than not, there's little to no representation of asexuality in media. An article titled "Asexuality in Fiction" points out that romanticism is often used to humanize or reward a character. Robots want to be human. They want a romantic relationship. Ex-villain is being rehabilitated and redeeming themselves. They're gonna start dating. Previously creepy or wacky side character starts being more important. Get them a significant other. If you save the world, get a prospective girlfriend or boyfriend. It's a common pattern we see over and over in books, in movies, in TV shows, and it alienates people who maybe don't see themselves as being in a relationship. And it perpetuates the social norm that everyone needs to experience love in order to feel complete or human. Surprisingly, there is discrimination within the LGBTQ community towards asexuals, who are often viewed as attention-seeking, misinterpreted as not being sex-positive, or being judgmental of other people's sexual practices, which is simply not the case. There's a lot of dispute for some reason over what the A in LGBTQA stands for. When asked, most people think that the A stands for allies, or people who are supportive of LGBTQ identities. I'm on the internet, so naturally I got into an argument on this topic. Allies are important, this is true. But you also need to ask yourself, who needs more awareness? Who needs more representation? I think it's safe to say that a large majority of people recognize that there exists in this world straight people who do support LGBTQ identities. On the other hand, you have asexuals who, even within the heart of the LGBTQ community, are so poorly represented, it's just sad. All right. A couple examples of this. This is from a very well-known anti-homophobia group who also repeatedly denies the existence of pansexuals, bisexuals, transgenders, and asexual groups, even going as far to say in a Facebook comment, "How is asexuality an identity? It seems like an emo fad." Dan Savage, well known for starting the It Gets Better campaign to prevent the suicides of gay youth, views asexuals as being abnormal and repressed. An article titled "Prejudice Against Group X" was published in September of 2012 in Psychology Today. So for those of you who don't know, the Kinsey scale is a fairly well-known scale used to rate sexuality as being either between 0, straight as a rod, or 6, gay as a rainbow. The issue with the Kinsey scale is that it fails to place asexuality within the 0 to 6 range, and is therefore subsequently labeled as Group X. This article revealed the findings of a study that indicated that people, A, expressed more negative attitudes towards asexuals, B, desired less contact with asexuals, and C, were less willing to rent an apartment to or hire an asexual applicant. Out of every sexual orientation surveyed, asexuals were consistently the most prejudiced against and discriminated against. Asexuals were also shown to be the most dehumanized, given their inherent lack of sexual interest, which is widely considered a universal interest. Asexuals were characterized as being machine-like or animalistic. Group X is targeted for its lack of sexual interest, even more than homosexuals and bisexuals are targeted for their same-sex interests. Study authors wrote that this confirms that sexual desire is considered a key component of human nature, and those lacking it are viewed as relatively deficient, less human, and disliked. Nope, go back. Okay. So why am I here? Why present this information to you? Personally, I'm a huge proponent of education, and by education, I don't mean just academics, but being more knowledgeable of the world around you. Education and awareness are the first steps to helping end prejudice and discrimination. By being here in the audience right now listening to me, you are all now more informed of the different people that exist around you. The hope for me here is that after listening to this presentation, if one of your relatives or friends or even a stranger comes out to you, that you can be understanding and supportive of them. Thank you.